Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to show you a jig system I've been using. It's designed to go with the Ortur Laser Master 3. It could be used with other machines with small mods to the dimensions, but it's mostly focused on the LM3. It might need a few more tweaks to get it dialed in still, but if you're a subscriber to my channel and you want to give it a try, just send me an email with your subscriber name and I'll send you the Lightburn file so you can make your own and maybe point out any flaws you might find, or if you can, share improvements you might come up with. Okay, so you're going to need all of these parts cut out on your machine. You're going to need some wood glue. You're going to need some 1/8 inch dowels, two 1/4 inch hex bolts, or thumb screws if you can find them, in 1 inch length. You'll also need two 1/4 inch threaded inserts, and I'll show you what those are for later in the video. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is glue these pieces together. You're going to need two pieces labeled middle and the bottom piece. You're going to put a little bit of glue on here. You don't want to put so much that it oozes out when you clamp it together and gets into these little fingers. Otherwise, they won't fit together very well. Okay, in this next step, we're going to take these dowels, and I suggest you sand the tips down to kind of give it a point so it'll go in easier. And get everything lined up, kind of tap it in there carefully or they'll break. Another thing I would say is use short pieces. If you use a big long piece, it'll break for sure. It's kind of awkward for me to do this because it's like 10 degrees in the garage and I have to wear gloves and it's super hard to handle things. You can't feel what you're doing. And bam, breaks it. But that's okay as long as it goes through all the pieces. And then when you're done, you can just snap them right off and we'll sand it smooth in a later step. And now we're just going to throw on a couple of clamps and let this part dry up before moving on to the next step. Alright, now we're going to take some sandpaper and sand down the ends of those dowels on both sides till it's nice and flush. Now we're going to need some more wood glue, two more 1/8 inch dowels, the smallest cutout piece, and be careful of the orientation of which way the fingers are going. Same process, add a little bit of glue, very little. You definitely on this one don't want to get it in the fingers. They're small and it'll be a complete pain to try to scrape it out of there. And it'll be the same exact thing with the dowels. Line it up and tap them in there. On these, they don't have to go all the way through every single layer though. Just as long as you get it through that first top layer there, you're good. And then once you have the dowels in there, go ahead and clamp it up, let it dry. And now we're going to install these threaded inserts into the top portion here. I use a little bit of super glue just to help lock it in because this 1/4 inch plywood tends to not be that high of quality, especially from Home Depot. And again, it's a real pain to try to do this with gloves. I tried not to get it on there, but I ended up when it was all over with having super glue all over the place. For these thumb screws or bolts, whatever you want to call them, you could use just a regular 1 inch long quarter-inch bolt. And if you can't find the thumb screw version of it, I'll put a link to the 3D printable version of this that I made that you can make your own. It's really simple, just need a little bit of super glue. This piece right here will help align the jig on the bed so that it's centered and also parallel. And I'll show that in the coming step. As you can see, you just slide it in so that those fingers lock in, and then tighten down the thumb screws so it doesn't move. Okay, so to set this jig up, we need to know where the center point is. So in order to do that, you can have your machine burn a square, its maximum dimensions. So for the Ortur, that would be 400 millimeters by 400 millimeters. Then measure from one side over 200 millimeters to give you your center point, and then mark it. Now to make sure that the jig was parallel, for me, I used a 1/2 inch MDF and I clamped it to the frame to be sure that it was square and tight. And then I just take the jig and slide it up against the board all the way so we know we're square, and then move it over until it's aligned with that center mark that we made earlier. And you can use the middle finger as a guide. It works perfectly, and you line it up there. Now you might not want yours positioned the same way as mine. You could take that 1/2 inch out, or you could add in whatever your preferences might be, or whatever your workspace is. If you're satisfied where you have it aligned and positioned, this is how I attach it. I first take a couple of drops of super glue here, dab it on there, not too much, and then I align it just like we did before, and I will let it dry for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll drill a couple holes in there where those pre-made holes are already on it, and then I will screw it down. And this is what it should look like once you have it installed and screwed down. And actually, you probably don't even have to screw it down if you put enough super glue on there. Here's an example of a template I made, which holds a 5x7 piece of glass. This is how you would set it up if you were engraving directly on your wasteboard and you weren't using a honeycomb bed or anything like that. And you could make these templates any size you want. You can make it fit whatever you want, and then when you stick it back in, it's going to be in exactly the same position that it was before. You might also have to play with the kerf on yours to get the fit just right. I used a .003 inch kerf, which ended up being a perfect fit for me, but your machine may be slightly different than mine, so you'll have to play with that. This is how you set it up if you're using a honeycomb bed. I'm using a Comgrow, which happens to be 1 inch height, so this jig is designed with that in mind. If you're using a different height bed than this, you may have to make some changes to the jig itself as far as how tall it is. And you could do that by just removing one of the middle layers or adding. So it works the same way as before. You would just slide in the piece labeled the top piece until the fingers lock in, and then tighten down the thumb screws until it's tight. And now you can use templates on the top of your honeycomb bed just exactly the same way as before. Fits fits in nice and snug and you're ready to go. Now, as I said earlier in the video at the very beginning, if you're a subscriber and you want to try this out and see if it works for you, go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll send you the file. Hopefully it'll be something that somebody out there can get some use out of. Here's a little clip of the next project I've got working on, and hopefully I'll be able to release that video fairly soon. Got a few little tweaks to make on this first, but it's a Z-axis also for the Ortur, and man, it makes everything so much easier than using that thumb screw. Now, I just want to thank everybody for watching my video, and I hope you find the content worthy of subscribing for. And until next time, take care.